Welcome to the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi podcast. And, going through some family photos. We did that, a couple of weeks ago, Jodi, with your mom. You were going through some old family photos that she had saved. And, it's a cool conversation starter, especially when your kids are seeing younger pictures of you. And
that they've never seen. It's a way to connect that you don't realize. You probably have a box of photos sitting on a shelf, or maybe they're on a drive, whatever, on your computer. If you are going to see family, it's a really good way to connect. You bring back memories and you create new ones sitting there laughing and telling stories.
Yeah. And today, now we've got like literally thousands upon thousands of photos because we can snap as many as we want, on our phones or whatever. It's limitless. In fact, I don't know that, our girls are ever going to be able to go through every single photo and video that I've shot, Jodi, for the last, 20 years of their lives. So
I don't imagine they will, but they know it's there. Everything's documented,
But one thing that I realized looking at your mom's picture, it flashed me back to being, a kid, because this is just the childlike mind. When you see black and white photos, which were pretty much the order of the day through the 1960s, color film was around by the 1940s, but most pictures that people were taking that were home photos or portraits at a studio or something like that were black and white until the mid 1960s, and then everything after that, is color. So as a kid, you start to think that your parents' lives were in black and white. When I pictured that time period before I was born, it's black and white, like World War II footage and all that stuff. You don't know it anywhere if you did any other way other than if you lived it, that it appears to be that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I think that's also a generational thing that is gone, because anybody really who's under the age of 40 or maybe even 45 is they've seen the black and white photos. They may or may not have seen their family members, in that light. And certainly Gen Z, has had multiple generations of color photos. Yeah. So I have trouble distinguishing now when I look at, pictures from the 90s, other than the hair and the sweaters and everything else, the fashion. The color's a little bit different, but it's very difficult to distinguish. You can't just place something in a period of time unless you know what the fashion trends were. Right. But I just thought it was weird that, that thought growing up, old movies were that same, way that we were.
You're saying that you as a child, when you saw those things, you thought, oh, my grandfather had a black and white childhood. You thought he lived in that, it looked like that.
Yeah, when you're a kid, you didn't really understand. When you've got color pictures today and then you've got black and white pictures then. And I guess I would say that we were kind of that transitional generation, right? What's the color photos, the only black and white photos of me are those as a baby, like baby, and maybe up to a year old. And then everything after that was color. And it was probably a cost thing for my parents, I'm guessing, at that point, because black and white film was cheaper. But by the time Kodak came along with the Instamatic camera and the cartridges, color photography was not a big deal.
I love black and white photography, and I dabbled in photography in college, and so I have some black and white photos of me from the 90s.
But that's kind of artsy, though.
It's very artsy and fun.
Isn't it interesting how when black and white photo came out, it was a technological limitation, but now it's art. And I agree with that. I love that. I saw a black and white picture of you actually at the microphone here, Jodi, that the contrast just really
Contrast
works.
is the word.
It's almost like it's almost more 3D-like, even though it's not 3D.
It tells a different story. That's why filmmakers sometimes still use it in modern film when they have color options, but they still use it. What I was going to say about the black and white photos is my favorite thing about looking at old family photos of like your grandparents and those photos being in black and white. It's also my family. A lot of those photos, they were there just to capture the family. They weren't there to smile. There are literally lots of family photos of my mom's family all together just sitting there. Like, be still and let's capture us as we were in 19 whatever it was. Yeah. And I'm like, now we're all like, hey, say cheese.
Like it was the 1800s.
Yeah, but no smiling.
That was the way.
That surprises me. Well, there's a picture of my grandparents and my dad and two uncles, and they're all smiling in that photo.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm just saying my family. Really, I think I had a little bit more of a serious family.
Yeah, I'm
not when I was a kid, but when they were.
When my grandfather was a colonel, actually, now that I think about it, every single photo of my grandfather from the time of his graduation high school photo to his time in the military to his time at Exxon on his badge and all that is he always smiled.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's cool.
so he did not have the stoic look. And
Nice.
you know, and that was his personality too.
Sure.
When you see that, that's the warm person that he was. You know, he was different. Not that he wasn't tough, you know, when he needed to be, because he was definitely tough. He was that generation, you know. But he was warm and welcoming to people, and his photos looked that way.
Well, he was a college cheerleader too, wasn't he?
He was.
So maybe that
Yeah.
lent to the
In
Yeah.
the
always
1930s.
being
Yeah.
on. The one thing that always got me when I was a kid about black and white photos is I wanted to know what color your suit was.
Yeah.
Or like if I was in the photo with my mom and dad, what
did that
color
really-
was this shirt I was wearing?
Yeah.
Or, you know, what color was the car? All that stuff. It's just like
You have to just
I
sort
have
of
no-
imagine
Even
it.
watching black and white and old reruns and black and white TV, it's the same thing. It's like
Yeah.
you know all of that is colored, but what is it? What is the
Yeah,
color?
and if the only way to know is like if you see a snapshot from the set, which occasionally was shot in
Yeah.
color. The weird part for that, for me, and the first movie that I remember them doing this with was, you know, the Jimmy Stewart movie, the Christmas movie from Jimmy Stewart. What's it called? It's a Wonderful Life.
Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. They made a colorized version of that,
Right.
And that colorization, of course, is just an estimate of what they thought it would look like.
That's art. That's also somebody recreating art.
And some of those early colorizations, until CGI became much better, what it is, it had a fakeness to it. It almost looked like a painting, and not and not real colorization, for its time. But I guess that's going to be up to the imagination of the artist if they really don't know what color clothes that person was wearing at that time, or everything in the background.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite movies that my grandfather shot, I don't know why I just think this is so cool, because it was a mix of a time that was 100% black and white film, but he was shooting 8mm film, which of course had no sound to go with it.
Yeah.
And it's from 1939 when he was visiting his grandmother in Parkersburg, and he and his brother were in the military. And so I guess that's before the U.S. got involved in World War II. So I'm not really sure why he was, he was still in the Arlington area or whatever, But anyway, it's in color, and it's like, it's not colorized.
Yeah.
It was shot in color on what they called Kodak color safety film in 1939. And I don't know, I just think those glimpses are really cool, because that's about as close as you're going to get to seeing any sort of real footage that looks realistic from that time period. It doesn't go back farther than that.
How did that look compared to something that was black and white and colorized? The colors, how did they look? Did they
Probably
the
not as
colors were
vibrant.
great.
look real as opposed to
Probably not as vibrant as an artist would have brushed into it.
Well, so what I would say is they're actually too vibrant.
Oh.
It's, if you think like Wizard of Oz, which was shot in color in 1939, coincidentally. You think about the color segments of that movie and the way that it looks out.
Yeah.
It's not as contrasty, may be the best word, because it's not like there's a natural flow between colors. Everything is pretty saturated and jumping out at you, and that's what it looked like.
Okay.
His brown suit was brown, and the leaves in the background, because it was fall, were red. And
You're talking about all this. You understand that the way everything matters when you're talking about color and the eye capturing color, because the way you see a blue suit may be different than the way I see a blue suit.
Yeah.
Because of your vision, Sam, and versus my vision. Also, lighting has everything to do. A blue suit might look way too blue in the wrong lighting, and then subtle in different lighting. That means outdoor, that means indoor, that means you trying to manufacture that light.
yeah.
Color is an ever-changing thing, really, depending on its setting.
And you know what I'll tell you about that color film from that time period, and I think we did a podcast a couple of years ago on this. It was my dad that had saved those films. Unfortunately, like there's some that just deteriorated because if you didn't buy the right film, it sat in canisters and it turned to this nasty blob. But the ones that we were able to salvage look great as long as it was shot in focus. the quality of that is actually better than the videotape from the 1980s that we were shooting on early camcorders.
Why is that?
I mean, I don't know, because TV was not HD at that point. It was what they called SD, standard definition. You know, I remember the first time that I saw a football game. Actually, it was at our neighbors in 2003.
We were dog sitting, and they had left the TV on for the dogs, and they had the first HD TV, and we were like, whoa.
Yeah.
Remember? I wanted to stay.
And I couldn't believe the difference because, like, if you watch old video footage from the 80s and the 90s, you can barely see the players' numbers on their back. You know what I'm saying? It's all very blurry.
It was a football game we watched.
Right. But those films, as long as you shot them, in focus, were absolutely better, quality. The audio is the only thing that's not there. I guess you really had to have some money. I know that there are, anybody who was brought up in Hollywood had the 8mm cameras or 16mm cameras with the soundtrack thingy on it. But, so we never had any audio recordings of anything until my dad bought his first camcorder. But it just struck me how funny it is. Whatever you're exposed to is the way that you picture things. And as a kid, it was like that was the point of demarcation. Something was old if it was in black and white. It was newer if it was in color. Now it can be 50 years old and it's in color. And that just, you know what I'm saying? You got to
That's a kind of an
wrap your head around
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
And there are other things that mark, what's old and what's not old. We just don't know what it is. We're not the generation. For us, it's like it's that.
Yeah.
As far as looking at photos or looking back into your family archives. But there could be something else that our kids would think, oh, well, that's obviously old because her hair.
Or they see a VCR sitting on top of the TV.
Like, what is that?
What is that thing?
Right,
what
or
is
a
that?
phone on a desk.
A phone plugged into a wall.
A wall, exactly. And fashion's the dead giveaway. You know what I mean? It's the big hair of the 80s.
Fashion's cyclical, though. I mean, it is the dead giveaway because when it's all together, you can see an old picture.
I don't think big hair ever came back, though, right? I mean, that was a 1980s
I'm still
thing.
hopeful.
And,
Subscribe to the Murphy, Sam, and Jody podcast. Free and easy.